Hello, hello. Well, good morning, actually. It's, time is it? 5:45 in the morning. And I've got a sore back. And I've woken up a little bit earlier than I intended, so I'm going to play something nice and relaxing prior to starting my day. And, ooh, I've got a lot to do today. Yikes. So I am playing Viscera Clean-Up Detail. This is a game I've had for quite a while. I think full price on Steam is £10, but if you pick it up on sale, you should be able to get it for half that or less. And it's not a fabulous game, but it's one I come back to from time to time. I should say I'm not an expert at this by any means, and I'm, don't watch this in order to learn how to get 100%. I'm just going to play solo. Yeah, very nice thing. You can do split screen co-op, which is rather cool. And, there's also standard multiplayer, which is nice, but I'm playing solo today. Right. No save file, clean up. You can do a speed run as well. Not so keen. I've never even tried it. Let's see, what map have I not played? Frostbite. Size medium, average length 1 hour. Okay. It'll probably take me more than that. And here we go. This dreary research and storage facility has a long record of minor psychological incidents due to the isolation and cold, but even so, details regarding the events that decimated the facility are sketchy at best. I hate that word, decimated. It's, decimated, it's an old Roman term meaning reduced by 1/10. So if you decimate something, it's still 90% there. But people use it as though it's completely wipe out something, but I guess it's this sort of onomatopoeic feel to it. An extraterrestrial organism is suspected to be involved, however, the junior recon team is certain it no longer poses a threat. Already there are multiple conglomerates interested in acquiring the installation of collected data once you have executed your sanitation duties. Work diligently and with speed, as the facility is expected to be swept over via orbital biobomb to ensure security. Yeah, take off and nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. So here we are. It's my job to clean up, effectively, after the game has taken place. That plays music. I don't play music in games. Ooh, hello. He's met a sticky end. This is a special box that allows me to collect things. Actually, that's full of stuff that I grabbed on my last playthrough. I should have emptied that at the office. Never mind. This is a J-harm. It's an extending platform. Let's me reach high areas. Okay. Coming back to that. Okay, Sloshomatic. This is where I get buckets of water. I've never tried this level before, so this is all new to me. Down. I need to dispose of this body. So I need to find the place where I dispose of things. Oh no, I don't want to punch out. I have a variety of tools at my disposal. Oh, hello. Technician, I think I'm the last one left. They killed each other one by one. Or it killed them, I don't know. This thing, whatever it is, we unleashed it and now we're paying the price. I can't get to the mess hall and I haven't had a drink in 3 days. I don't feel so hot. Did I just make a joke? Well, almost. I don't know whether I need to keep these or throw them away. I've been keeping them. Why has he's got a USB drive? I've been collecting these. I don't know if there's any reason to. Stuff I put in this blue box here will... I can take it out of the mission. Now, there's at least 2 other things I need to find. These are effectively waste bins. Aha. And the incinerator. Well, it doesn't look like things have gone well for him. You've got to be... Yeah, that's it, burn the body. You've got to be a little bit careful. See, I've walked through some blood and I've left a bloody footprint there. You have to be quite careful and methodical to ensure that you don't end up walking back over. Let's clean my mop. See if I can carry this guy. It's not going well for him either. Yeah, effectively, the game is based around the idea of you cleaning up after a first-person shooter has taken place. I think I made a video about this before. I've never actually done a proper playthrough. And seeing as I'm up early today, I thought I'd play this as a nice bit of relaxation. You've pretty much seen the whole game now. There's barely any game mechanics left that you haven't seen. And I realise for many people this will seem like a very boring game. Oops. But I think that's kind of its charm. There's something rather nice about being responsible for tidying up afterwards, doing an unseen sort of video game duty. Oh, hello. USB drive as well. At least I presume that's what these are. Right. The trick is to be sort of methodical, work your way through so you don't have to double back too much. See, that's where I touched that body against the fence. Bring it out. Can sometimes be a little tricky. I have to work everything out. You have an extra tool. Sniffer, which will point to stuff that you haven't cleaned. Oh. Things like that. And there we go. I've got one hell of a day to go through today, which I'm not looking forward to at all. I may have mentioned in some previous videos that I help run a music festival here. And I'm trying to organise some stuff to do with that at the moment, which is an absolute pain. try to sort out a booking for a hall, which we need in order to run the festival. Oh yes, strangely enough, we do dispose of buckets of water by putting them in the furnace. Yeah, so I'm trying to sort out this whole booking, and it's proving to be an absolute pest to do. And in actual fact, sorting out the booking itself isn't really the problem. The biggest problem is dealing with all our people. Because people have a habit of talking. Oops. Did I just spill the contents of that? Yes, I did. I find, yeah, everybody has a habit of talking too much. So what should have been a fairly straightforward thing to do, the tongues get wagged and everyone's been round town. Oh my, what a mess. So yeah, complete strangers and people who are nothing to do with the festival are phoning me up saying, hey, I hear you haven't got the booking for that hall. It's like, oh, for goodness sakes. It takes more time to deal with them than it does to actually do the job. So that's not fun. This is why this game's called Viscera Cleanup Detail. I always tend to call it Viscera Cleanup Patrol, which is wrong. Ooh. Well, I've been kind of collecting these. Don't know why. Oops. And of course, when you drop these meaty chunks, I tend to leave blood spatters behind, which I need to clean off, for goodness sakes. I also have guests to sort out for the festival. I've got a Chinese group I need to get in touch with. I've got some Cambodians who won't be able to come, but they would like to come at a future date. So I need to go and talk to their guys just to keep them sweet. Oh, I'm leaving footprints everywhere. Oh, and I have to phone Andy Kershaw today. I don't know if you're British, listening to this, and oops, you were around at a certain time. You may remember Andy Kershaw when he was a Radio 1 DJ. Specialises in world music. That's quite a distinctive voice. And I've got Andy Kershaw coming to the festival as a guest this year, which ought to be rather cool. He'll be giving a 2-hour lecture on his travels around the world. And he'll also be doing a DJ set for us, which I think should be rather cool. As Andy says, he's been to 96 countries on his travels, which is more than me even. And he's one of the few people who's been to North Korea, which indeed I have as well. I'm a big fan of North Korea. Ooh. Oh yeah, explosive barrels tend to explode. I shouldn't be putting them in here. Oh, it sets fire to things. Frig. I'll have to clean that up. Okay, don't put exploding barrels in the furnace. Now, when I say I'm a big fan of North Korea, this does not mean that I'm a supporter of the regime. Which ought to be self-evident. But I do have a lot of respect for the country. And I think they're very interesting. And generally much misunderstood and much maligned. I got into North Korea because I had a South Korean housemate years back. A girl named Ju. And when I met Ju, and she was saying she's from South Korea, I said, oh, yeah, there's a North Korea, isn't there? I said, what's the deal with them? And she said, oh, I don't know. We can't go there. Will this explode? And that immediately piqued my interest. So I felt like I really wanted to go to North Korea. Medical unit. I think you have to fill them with medical supplies. Now, going to North Korea is not a trivial thing. It's quite hard to do, and it took me approximately 3 years to organise a trip. Now, it's slightly more difficult for me because I used to work in politics, and at the time I was also working in the film industry, and I wanted to take a TV camera with me. I wasn't going to take a film crew, it was just going to be me with a camera, because I figured I would probably never get the chance to go there again, or at least the country would never be in the sort of situation that it was in at the time. So I thought I would like to go and document what I saw. Now, I could appreciate that I'm coming from an enemy country, and that, whilst I certainly wasn't a spy or an agent or anything of the UK government, that on paper I possibly could look like one. And my great uncle was a spy. If you're of a certain age in Britain, my great uncle was a man called James Robertson Justice. And Sir Lancelot Spratt in the Doctor movies. Okay, doesn't look like there's anything up here to clean. But there's stuff over there. Oops. Yeah. People involved in the sort of performing arts often have reasons or excuses to travel around. Yeah, the government does tend to approach people like that and ask them to keep their ears open. Oh dear. That's not necessarily to say that one would take an active role in intelligence or anything like that, but they will likely want to ask you if you saw or heard anything of interest to them. That's generally how most sort of spying really works. So, it's not James Bond. So yeah, on paper I looked like perhaps the kind of person whom the government may well have asked to take part in that kind of activity, especially coming from the family background that I do, details of which I probably can't discuss. God, that makes it sound very... oh. It sounds very much more than it is. Anyway. I do like that the equipment in this is a bit janky. Doesn't work half the time. But yeah, in order to get myself to North Korea, there were a number of things I had to do. I actually had to get permission from my old employers. Not because of who I am or even anything that I did in particular for them, but for the very fact that I had a security clearance at one point. It wasn't so much what I knew as the kind of things I may have come into contact with, which was effectively nothing, but you know. Of course, there was all the fun of getting a North Korean visa too. I got to go and visit the North Korean embassy in London. Not as an embassy actually, because Britain doesn't have formal diplomatic relations with North Korea, so it's not technically an embassy. I believe it's they call it a diplomatic mission. And most of the main embassies in London are all clustered around the same area, which is quite convenient. But North Korea, no, their embassy is a suburban house in Ealing. It's quite incongruous, really. You expect a sort of a big sort of mansion type place, or a sort of high security thing like the Americans. The American embassy is freaking ridiculous. They've just opened a new one, or just about to. And the North Korean embassy is just a house. And chaps there were all extraordinarily nice. They did ask me, why have you told us this stuff about your background? I said, well, it's nothing that you can't find out on Google in 5 minutes, so I said, I thought it better to tell you than to have you find out. Which they thought was fair enough. Oops. But, yeah. North Korean guys were very funny, because I initially... oops. Bother. I needed to phone up to check details before my visit. And when I phoned them, I said, oh, hello, is this the North Korean embassy? And they said, no, sir, this is the Korean diplomatic mission. Not North Korea? This is the Korean diplomatic mission, sir. I say, oh yeah, they don't call themselves North Korea, do they? You get the same fun if you phone South Koreans, actually. I said, is this the diplomatic mission of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea? Yes, sir, how can I help you? So, that was a lot of fun. And when I went around there, it's a bunch of blokes living in a suburban house. And they like basketball, and they like golf. Oh, nuts. Apparently they get on very well with their neighbours. I was a bit disappointed the day I went to visit them. They said, oh, it's a pity you weren't here yesterday, we're having a barbecue. They love having barbecues. Now, obviously, I am aware that North Korea is a bit of a contentious country. I'm aware that some people suggest that even going there as a tourist is almost an act of betrayal, because you are only going to be presented with one version of the facts, and you will not be free to go where you want, and that you are also providing foreign currency for the regime by paying for a tour. It's like, yep. Now, still knowing all that, I wish to go ahead because I don't particularly care about any of those things. I'm very conscious that whilst people will say that North Korea will present me only with propaganda and I will only see one version of things, that's one version more than I normally get. I'm always amazed that whenever North Korea comes up on the news, if you read the comments below an article about it, you'll see people going on about how the North Korean people are starving, that the elites control everything, and that people have no freedom and all the rest of it. And how they're so sure, I do not know. I've been to China, and I've been to the region of China that borders North Korea, and goodness me, you meet an awful lot of North Koreans in that part of China. The people who are kept as absolute prisoners in their country, who are not free to move around and cannot possibly escape. There are thousands of them living in that part of China. In fact, around there, every prostitute you meet is North Korean. Some people say they are actually agents of the government, being sent out of their country to earn money. Oh, goodness me. A lot of what is said about North Korea is ridiculous. And a lot of the stories that one hears about North Korea are obvious nonsense. Or at least they would be if people ever stopped to think about them. There was a story that went around a few years ago that all men in North Korea are required to have the same haircut as Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea. Now, that sounds like quite a believable story, doesn't it? You would think from hearing that, well, yeah, that's the kind of thing I believe that North Korea would do. Well, a simple test to see if that is nonsense is watch any footage from North Korea and have a look at the haircuts people have, and notice that practically no one has the same haircut as Kim Jong-un. So where on earth did this story come from? And why are people so keen to believe it? Well, oops. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh, sorry. It'll be fine. Yeah, the haircut story, it originally came from a radio station. Oh gosh, what on earth is that station called? Is it, oh, I forget the name. Hang on. I could go and look it up on Wikipedia, but I'm not going to. And that station is basically an American propaganda station. It's funded by the CIA. Now, that's not to say that it it isn't truthful in a lot of what it reports. It almost certainly is. But it does like running anti-North Korean stories. And it's the source for a surprising number of them over the years. Did I put a chair in there and have it explode? I can't remember the name of that radio. It's like Freedom Radio. Americans always choose such childish names for these things. And yeah, they came up with that story. I think it was based on having visited a barber shop in Korea. And, they'd actually tried a progenitor of the same story some years earlier. I'd seen this one, list of the 10 approved haircuts in North Korea. And that was nonsense as well. They'd just gone to a hairdresser's, seen a poster with a bunch of pictures of different haircuts, and written a story saying that those were the only approved official haircuts. Yeah, you ever been to a hairdresser? Well, then you'll have seen pictures on the wall of different types of haircuts. It's the same everywhere. Doesn't mean that they're officially mandated haircuts or anything like that. But that's how it goes. So I'm naturally wary of any story about North Korea. And a lot of people these days will say, oh, I do all my own research on this stuff and whatever. Most people don't really know how to research things. I suppose that's the great tragedy of the way that news works these days. It used to be there were only a few sources of news, that there were only a couple of news reports a day, and because there was a period of time between an event happening and it actually being reported, there was time for journalists to investigate. There's time for journalists to explain. These days, for the vast majority of things, journalists just tell you what happened. They no longer tell you why, because the gap between an event happening and it being reported is minutes now. There simply is no longer the time these days to be able to explain what's going on. Uh-oh. Yeah, sometimes these machines are so janky they'll screw up. There's a third bit of something that fell out of this. Yeah, there was. So, these days, because there's so many different sources of news, and because news is so quick, there's no opportunity to explain or place it in context, or even sort of explain the significance of an event. Often it's just a case of reporting it, because you got to be first. Some journalists are very responsible, and they take the attitude that being first is not the most important thing. It's, being first and wrong is worse than being last and right. But whilst I think that's a commendable attitude, it doesn't square particularly well with reality. So, if you heard that North Korean Kim Jong-un haircut story, if you heard that before, did you believe it? And often, believing things, it's not even a question of actually, believing the story itself. It's just of hearing it and not questioning it. Perhaps you heard that story and, you don't care. It's not important to you. It has no bearing on your life. but you heard it going by and you thought nothing of it. Obviously, you don't have the time or the resources to investigate every single news story. And, who does? I mean, I'm a media analyst. That's my day job. I spend my working life reading and analysing media reports and news stories from all over the world on a variety of subjects. Mostly for commercial purposes, so it's not like I'm going around investigating journalism most of the time. One of my clients is McDonald's. That's in fact they're quite an interesting one. But anyway, did you perhaps hear this North Korean news story about haircuts before? Did you accept it? Did you believe it? The danger in that is that all of this sort of builds up a picture in our minds of what a country is like or how they behave. So when we hear stories at the moment about North Korea and its nuclear weapons, then your attitude to that or your opinion of that can be coloured by these stories you've heard before. And, I've heard lots of ridiculous stories that Kim Jong-un executed his uncle by having him torn apart by a pack of it's either dogs or wolves, I can't remember. Abject nonsense. The problem with North Korea is that nobody knows anything. Pretty much every journalist who writes about it, every analyst, commentator or expert who talks about it or writes about it, they've never been there. Now, that's not to say that you have to go to a place or that you have to experience things firsthand or your thoughts are invalid. But, when someone is presented as an expert on North Korea, it would be very interesting to hear what their qualifications for that role are. Because anyone can say they're an expert on North Korea. I've read very widely on the subject. Why shouldn't I? All I gotta do is phone up a few news stations, suggest to them that I'm an expert with my media analysis background. I could be a guest on news programs. And then, things I said about North Korea would be taken seriously, and my opinions be treated as though they're expert opinions and have some kind of background to them. It gives them undue weight. So yeah, I find these things all a bit vexing. Oops. Now, I'm actually being quite careful in what I say. I'm not trying to present any particular opinions about North Korea. I will tell you, certain factual things or things that are very easy to derive. But I'm not going to present my opinions as facts the way that everyone else does. I think North Korea is an incredibly important place at the moment because we, and when I say we, I mean various parties in the West, could be involved in a war or a military skirmish with North Korea, and I think our attitude to that can be greatly coloured by what we have heard about the country. In North Korea these days, they're they've become sort of favourite bad guys in Hollywood films. You know, China can't be the bad guys anymore because it's far too big a market. A lot of Hollywood films don't necessarily make a lot of money in the West, say. For instance, you know, people may wonder why the Transformers films and the Fast and the Furious films are still going. How much money can these films really be making? Well, in both those examples, they're making an awful lot of money in China. So if you have China as the bad guys in the film, Chinese audiences are not going to be watching those. Body bag. So, in order to avoid annoying the Chinese, you find that films are designed to cater to Chinese audiences these days. That's why there'll be a Transformers 6 and 7 and whatever. Transformers will continue for as long as the Chinese audience wants to watch them. It's nothing to do with you anymore. When I used to work in the film business, we would talk about how a film needed to wash its face in its home market, and by that we mean recover its costs. And by costs we mean sort of the budget for making the film, and usually people also mean the advertising costs associated with promoting it, all that kind of thing. A little bit more story there. So yeah, we used to think that if films could cover their costs in their home market, that was grand, because then it meant any overseas earnings were just a bonus. And yeah, fair enough. But these days, some films don't actually cover their costs in their home markets. Instead, they can make the majority of their earnings overseas. I don't know what that really sort of means for the film industry as such, but it just illustrates a change in the way that films are earning money, and indicates a change in the attitude of the producers making them. I'm glad to see these are crisps and not chips. Crisps are what we call chips in the UK. Chips are what we call fries, except chips are different from fries. Right, let's try not to drop this on the way out. But yeah, because the Chinese audience for films is so large, you risk a lot of money by annoying or creating dislike in Chinese audiences. Because of the sheer amount of money involved, certain films may not make a profit in their home territory. I need another box. So, don't piss off the Chinese. It's generally a fairly good rule in life anyway. So, North Korea becomes the bad guy of choice in films, because you can say whatever you like about them, they're not going to complain. And, you know, even if they do, so what? It's not like you're making any money off them. I'm not sure how many of these objects I should be bidding. Now, I suppose some of you might point to that film, The Interview, as an example of North Korea being angered by Western media. That may be the case, it may not be the case. Did North Korea hack Sony Pictures of America? I don't know. And I don't think anyone else does either. It's notoriously difficult to trace the source of hacks. But people are very keen to apportion these things to the North Korean regime wherever possible. And certainly in the case of the Sony Pictures America hack, it seems strange that Sony, a company who had hackers active inside its servers for months, I can't remember if it was 6 months or 18 months, but it was a long time, and they kept passwords in files called password.txt. Yeah. Stuff like that. And had completely failed to secure their servers in any meaningful way. But within 1 day of the hacks becoming public, suddenly the geniuses at Sony were able to identify North Korea as being the source of the hacking attacks. I thought, those people who were so incompetent and understood so very little about computer security are suddenly now experts that are able to trace the source of a hacking attack in just hours. In other words, I don't believe them. Now, that's not to say that it wasn't North Korea behind these attacks. It may well have been. I think Sony managed to dodge a bullet there. I don't know if you saw the film The Interview. A sort of film poking fun at North Korea, but it's not a very good film. It's just it's a poorly made film that would not have done very well at the box office. It probably ended up getting more viewers as a result of that publicity than it would have done otherwise. There was an incident in the lab today. I found Dr. Carpenter dead, but Dr. Blair couldn't tell me how he died. Even stranger is the fact that Dr. Blair was in the lab when it happened. I swear things have been getting weirder and weirder since we thawed those damn specimens. Oh, pardon me, I'm going to cough. Best to mute your microphone while I do that. So yeah, you know, I have a natural suspicion when it comes to any stories involving North Korea. Do North Korea have nuclear weapons? Yes. Are they a threat to the world? No. Oh, bother. You know, from what I saw in North Korea, their greatest fear, to the point where they're absolutely paranoid about it, is that the Americans will invade them. I don't know how likely it is that the Americans would invade, But there are certain circumstances in which I could see that. I don't think that the Americans are actively wanting to invade North Korea. Oh no. But certainly, this is sort of North Korea's #1 fear. And if you hear from North Korean defectors, they will often talk about how they are raised to hate and fear America. That certainly happens. Of course, if you remember well, of course none of you will remember, but if you look at the Korean War and how that came about and who exactly was involved, the idea of the Americans wanting to use military force or to invade North Korea doesn't seem so very far-fetched. Oh, horrible squelching from inside this box. And if you look at the amount of American troops, what did I just kick over? The US has approximately 30,000 troops stationed on the border between North and South Korea. If you pay attention to the news, you will often see mention of North and South Korea conducting military exercises. And if you actually look at where these military exercises are occurring, you'll find they're almost always just off the coast of North Korea. They rarely do these solely within South Korea. Seoli. Oh yeah. Oh. Oh dear. Yes, there is, well, there are, oh yeah, I've got to be careful, I keep shooting exploded barrels because it creates soot. There are things occurring which are seen as provocations, military provocations. Whenever these military exercises take place, the North Koreans see them as America threatening them. Which I think it probably is. Just kicked over a bucket again, didn't I? North Korea likes to respond by having nuclear missile tests. Certainly, you'll have heard on the news that North Korea has nuclear missiles that can reach America. And that's almost true. North Korea... Oh no. Colin Powell stood up before the United Nations a few years ago and talked about North Korea being able to hit America, and that was very misleading. It was particularly stupid and short-sighted, because at the time North Korea did not possess any missiles that could actually hit America. They might have been able to hit a US base in Okinawa, and depending on how you interpret international law and the possession of things like that, then theoretically you could maybe regard that as American territory and thus part of America. Very iffy. But the reason I say it was very stupid of Colin Powell to say that is, of course, that the North Koreans weren't going to stop developing nuclear weapons at that point. And so they were likely at some point to have a missile that actually could reach, you know, mainland America. And then when you go out and complain about that, see, didn't you already say this years ago? Sounds like you're kind of crying wolf here on this one. They're less likely to believe you the second time, even though what you're saying is now completely true. Oh, street cleaner's about to go past. I guess because it's 6:30. Right, if I can get the rest of this body out of here, I can maybe get this place finished. I mean, North Korea has continued to develop its missile technology. Its Taepodong range of missiles have been developed and can now strike American territory. Well, Guam. They're not exactly slamming into California yet. But if those missiles are developed to their theoretical maximum, then they should actually be able to reach the American mainland. You know, I'm going to pause until the street cleaner goes past. Right, street cleaner has departed. Now, I think many people would regard North Korea having nuclear weapons at all as a bad thing. And, well, it depends who you are. If you're North Korea, no. No, it makes sense, because, you know, if their paranoia is a fear of military invasion by America, then the one thing that can prevent that is nuclear weapons. And, you know, one has to think, if North Korea didn't have nuclear weapons, would they have been invaded before now? They might have been. You know, it certainly makes a lot of very logical sense for North Korea to have nuclear weapons, as it ensures their safety. Or at least it ensures the safety of their government. I don't think there's any particular harm in North Korea having nuclear weapons. They can't really use them. They've only got a couple. They have very few weapons indeed. It's not like they've got hundreds of thousands of missiles lined up like the Americans do. I'm going to throw away this tail. If North Korea launched a nuke, well, they'd instantly be attacked by quite a few countries. And, yeah, that would spell the end of North Korea very quickly. Right, let's get out our sniffer. Oh yeah. Now, also, you know, who is the suggested target of North Korean nuclear missiles? Yeah, America? Possibly. Okay, I think this is probably clean. Yeah, would they want to nuke South Korea? Well, they don't need missiles to do that. The South Korean capital, Seoul, is actually quite close to the border with North Korea. It would almost be enough for the North Koreans just to wheel a nuke up close to the border and just set it off on their side. Reduce whiskey intake. I'm not sure I should be saving these, but I am. Cigarette. Yeah, if North Korea wishes to strike Japan, well, it's certainly got the missiles to do it. Doesn't have to develop anything new to get that far. Oh, I'm going to be tracking a lot of blood around, haven't I? Anyway, you know, that's enough about the sort of blah 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 politics of this kind of thing. You know, it's necessary to bear in mind what we know and what we think we know about North Korea when it comes time. You know, that there may be military action there, and let's not forget that our attitude to such action may be coloured by the stories we've heard, and even stupid things like the films we've seen. I don't know if you saw the film remake of Red Dawn. Red Dawn was a film from the 80s, starring Charlie Sheen, in which the Russians invaded America and a plucky group of teenagers fought them off, blah blah blah. But when they went to do a remake, it just simply wasn't credible to have Russia as the enemy anymore. So they made North Korea the enemy. In fact, initially they actually made China the enemy, but the studio worried that that would reduce their chances of selling the film in China. So they went back and digitally altered all the flags in the film to be North Korea instead. Perhaps you've played the computer game, is it Homefront? I think there's been 2 of them. Pretty average first-person shooters, but it's based on the idea of North Korea invading America. And it's pretty much impossible. The North Koreans lack the manpower to convincingly be able to do that. And they certainly lack the technology. The North Korean army may be quite large, but it's not a technologically sophisticated army. So the chances of them being able to successfully invade America are freaking 0. But anyway, here's me going blah 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 about all this. Perhaps you'd like to hear about my visit to North Korea. And what was it like, and what did I see? Well, I'll say I greatly enjoyed my trip. Probably for all the wrong reasons. And I did not go as part of a tour group. It took quite a long time to organise my visa, and organising the trip can be somewhat tricky. So I suppose the first thing to say is, after I got my visa and I was on my way there, oh, I should also say, I had a friend who was supposed to come with me, and he worked for the Metropolitan Police, the London Police, at the time. Not as a police officer, as a civilian staff member, but doing computery things. And they would not grant him permission to go, because they thought there was a chance that the North Koreans may try and kidnap him in order to sort of gain access to information. And, well, certainly he was not involved in anything like that. He controlled or had access to computer systems where things like that may have been discussed. So yeah, he was not allowed to go. Not by the North Koreans, but by his own country. I think, you know, when we talk about sort of the freedom or lack of it of the North Koreans to go where they wish, it might be interesting to bear in mind the fact that both I and my friend had to gain permission in order to be allowed to go. So anyway, I flew out to Beijing, and that was a bit, I mean, that was the most straightforward part of the trip, because then from Beijing there are flights to Pyongyang. The only problem is that North Korea doesn't, or at least at the time, I should stress that whatever I say about this may be no longer the case, but at the time Air Koryo, the North Korean airline, did not publish flight information outside of their own countries. So it was impossible for me to get a flight schedule whilst still in the UK. Air Koryo does theoretically have flights scheduled to Europe, but in reality these don't take place because Air Koryo, they don't have a good enough safety record for the European Union to allow them to actually fly in Europe. And that's a reassuring thing to know when you're getting on an aircraft. It's like, wow, you don't have a good enough security. Oh, jeez. You're not safe enough for me to be able to get on this plane anywhere else. So, what happened was, when I got to Beijing, I was booked into a hotel, and I simply had to wait there until I was collected by some North Koreans. Tour guides, I guess, in theory, although, you know, tour guides are almost certainly government agents. Now, as it happened, I didn't have to wait very long. I was told that I might be there for days, but in actual fact I was only there for hours. And I got taken to the airport and ushered onto an Air Koryo plane, which was cracking fun, because it was a Russian Ilyushin craft. The planes were old Aeroflot, Russian national carrier, an old Aeroflot aircraft, and you know, they were planes that the Soviets had got rid of as being past the end of their service life. So that's reassuring, isn't it? I don't know which of the stuff it's safe to leave and which I should bin, so I'm just binning everything. And there's one charming thing that I really liked on the Air Koryo is the stewardesses, flight attendants or cabin crew or whatever the hell we're supposed to call them these days. These people seem to change their mind about what their job's called every 10 seconds. I fear they might be called something demeaning, but it's them who keeps choosing what to call themselves, and then 5 minutes later they want to change it to a new title. So get it right. Anyway, North Korean stewardesses, they don't smile. Oh no, the street cleaner's back. Is that a flare? Yeah, it is. Oh, yuck. Bloody parts everywhere. Pause. Street cleaner. Right, it's disappearing off. So it comes along here, but... Oops. Comes along here 2 or 3 times every morning about this time. Yeah, anyway, North Korean air stewardesses on Air Koryo do not smile. And I love that. Because I loathe in American customer service and stuff that you know, people are encouraged to smile. Yeah, I mean, you might think there's nothing wrong with smiling, and I'm just a grumpy guts, and yeah, you're probably right. I don't like false smiles. I've never had a job where I've been encouraged to smile. None of my jobs have involved anything like that. And I would find it offensive if I was asked to do that. Because I don't like fake smiles, you know. American air stewardesses will smile even if they hate you. Like, I think there's something wrong if you're being encouraged to sort of smile at people you don't like. And if you smile all the time, then how does anyone ever know when you're smiling genuinely? You know, you devalue everything. It's like the overuse of that horrible term, awesome. You know, when something is awesome, it is literally filling you with awe. That you're almost struck dumb in reverence at the amazingness of this, that it is comparable to being in front of your God. What the hell is going on? One employee after another is turning up dead, and I can hardly cope with the situation. Some people are suggesting the specimens are somehow responsible. I'm not taking any chances, that's why I'm going to insist everyone's blood be screened for possible pathogens immediately. Charming bit of background. But yeah, you know, if you use a term like awesome casually, you know, I'm going to the shops, would you like anything? Oh, could you get me a newspaper? Yeah, certainly. Oh, awesome. No, that's not awesome. That's fine, at best. Yeah, it's a minor kindness. So if you run around saying awesome all the time, where do you have left to go? What happens if you are dumbstruck by something with an almost religious majesty? Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Whew. Mute. You know, you leave yourself with nowhere to go. Hyperbole damages your vocabulary. So, yeah, I don't like stewardesses who go around smiling all the time. It just seems so false. It feels like a lie. Maybe I'm overly sensitive to such things, but I liked on Air Koryo that, yeah, they didn't smile. Bugger. And, they probably didn't like me. After all, bear in mind, I'm from an enemy country. If you were a stewardess and somebody got on your plane from North Korea, you know, what would you think of them? What would your attitude be to them? I suppose over here you'd have to smile falsely at them. But the other fun thing is you're allowed to smoke. Yay! I remember as a kid when we used to be able to smoke on aircraft, and that was a very interesting thing back then. Because I mean, it seems odd that we've stopped smoking on aircraft. Not because of well, actually, no, it entirely is because of the air quality. Smoking on aircraft meant that the air quality, bizarrely enough, was higher. Because people smoked, they would have to blast fresh air through the cabins regularly, and so there was a strong supply of fresh air being pumped through the cabin in order to cope with the smell of the smoking. Because you're in a sealed metal tube. If you're not doing something to freshen the air, then it become very thick and smoky very quickly. Now, since smoking has been banned on aircraft, the air quality has gone down. You think, how can that be? Surely, with these air circulation systems and no smoking in there. I love interplanetary. Ooh. Conglomerates. Yeah, you would think that the absence of smoking would mean that the cabin air is cleaner. But it isn't, because airlines, what they've done instead is they have greatly reduced the fresh air that they pump into cabins, because it saves on fuel. And so the air that you breathe inside an aircraft these days is just largely recirculated. You're getting very little fresh air indeed. Oh, bending. Lantern. Ah, first aid supplies. Thank you. And on many aircraft, the air that is taken in from outside yes, excellent. I've got a few of those to do. The air that is taken in from outside actually comes in through an inlet in the engines. If the engines are not operating at full efficiency, you can end up with partially unburnt fuel and fumes being carried into the cabin. Not nice. If we were still allowed to smoke on planes, the air would be cleaner. What sad irony that is. What kind of box is this? Yeah, it's medical. Why is it all red? No. Oh. Close enough. Right. I wonder how many more of those I have to do. That's at least one. So yeah, it's quite charming on an air cargo plane being able to smoke and having very clean cabin air because of it. What irony. Anyway, when we got to North Korea, things went a little bit squint because I was due to pass through a train station. And this was at the time when Kim Jong-il was the leader of North Korea. And this is where things went a bit wrong. Kim Jong-il always travelled by train. He didn't like to fly. It's a sort of little-known North Korean fact. So Kim Jong-il actually had a special train that he used for I'll go to China mostly. And at this train station, as Kim Jong-il's train had been due to pass through, there had been an explosion, and there was a fear that this was an assassination attempt. It turned out it wasn't, it was just an accident, but that's what the fear was at the time. So when I arrived in country, even though I'd got careful permission to be able to take a TV camera with me, I was no longer in a position to really argue that I should be allowed that. So I gave up my TV camera willingly. I was allowed to keep my stills camera, but obviously I felt worried that my photographs might be a bit sensitive, or might be viewed as possibly being sensitive, and that I might not be able to take my photographs home with me quite as easily as had originally been planned. Now, I was slightly clever, I think, here. And that I had planned to use, I'd taken a Sony camera that took pictures and stored them on floppy disks. Yeah, this was a while back. And even then, this wasn't a new camera technology at the time. And, most things were using SD cards and things. But I took a camera that took pictures and saved them on 3.5-inch floppy disk. Partly because I thought it would make for easy interoperability. If I had been asked to sort of show my pictures, or I needed to easily be able to transfer them, something I figured a floppy disk might make things easier. Oh god, do I need that? Probably stick on one of these. So yeah, I gave up my TV camera at the border and my mobile phone. I put my mobile phone in an envelope and posted it to South Korea, to my friend staying there. It meant that I would be out of touch with the outside world. I wouldn't be able to communicate with anyone. That was fine. Didn't mind. Oops, hell's teeth. I'm good at kicking over these buckets. I've read various news stories that mobile phones are banned in North Korea, or that only the elites have them, or whatever. I don't know about the truth of that. I certainly saw plenty of people with mobile phones. Nuts. Because of the unfortunate timing of my trip, and I was there effectively as a tour of one. Ordinarily I would have been part of a tour party, but I was there on my own. And because of the timing of that, things got a bit rushed. My trip was shortened slightly, and as soon as I arrived, they took me off to climb a mountain, which was not the most thrilling activity. I've got a lot of buckets of water down here. There's certain things they insist on showing you, and is it Mount Baiku? Baiku? It made us go up that. I was like, good lord, I haven't slept for a day and a half. Okay. It was a lot of fun. Now, one of the things that I saw that I like best, and it's one of the most immediately noticeable things in North Korea, is there are propaganda posters on every street corner. Oh, that's not dirt. Yeah, everywhere you go, there are these propaganda posters, and I absolutely love them. They're all done in that wonderful socialist realism style. I used to love the Soviet ones, and particularly enjoy the Chinese ones as well. But the North Korean ones are special. And a lot of them I find very funny indeed. They'll show a North Korean soldier kicking in the roof of the American American Capitol. You know, the Capitol building, that big dome thing in Washington? Yeah, that. And I just find that endlessly hilarious. In fact, you know, many times when we went past one of these posters, I would just be falling around laughing, or I'd be laughing into my hand, trying very hard not to laugh, because, you know, it is rude. And my guide would be asking me, saying, you know, what's so funny? What's so funny? I cannot possibly explain, I'm sorry. Absolutely loved those. And, of course, that chap who died, was it Oscar? I can't remember. His son was called Oscar Warmbier, and the father was Otto, is it that way around? But yeah, that American kid who decided to steal a propaganda poster ended up in prison in North Korea, and then was released, but in a coma, and then died. That doesn't look good. North Koreans killed my son. Did they? Well, perhaps if your son hadn't been an idiot, he wouldn't have been in that position. You have to bear in mind, you know, you're in a country where you are the enemy. So, you know, friggin' behave. You know, it's amazing they let us in. I don't think Britain would be so welcoming to a group of North Korean tourists. Actually, that was another story that made me laugh. During the Olympics, the Winter Olympics in South Korea recently, one of the stories that I heard was that the North Korean cheerleaders are in actual fact sex slaves. Oh, interesting. That sounded like made up nonsense. Because, you know, you'd have read stories going on about how North Korean cheerleaders are very much chosen for their patriotism and dedication to the country, in order that they don't attempt to defect. Oh, yeah, probably. Well, who do you think is the most likely people to defect? Would it be a cadre of women that you rape constantly? You know, I don't know if there are parties for senior politicians in which sex slaves are provided. I don't think you would actually even need slaves as such. I think you'd probably be able to find enough women willing to do it. You know, do those parties exist? I don't know, possibly. Do they use the North Korean cheerleaders for that? I would doubt it. It's not a very good way of encouraging them to stay loyal, is it? Yeah, it's one of these stories that is sort of self-evidently untrue. It's very easy to believe, isn't it? Sounds like the kind of thing they do. Uh-oh. Yeah. So anyway, we had a nice itinerary of travel. We went various places. We saw various things. There's a hotel in Pyongyang which is reserved just for foreigners, and I was staying there. And it was quite weird because the floor I was on, and I think I was the only person on that floor. I barely met any other tourists while I was there, and that was strange. Because when we went to eat, I was pretty much eating alone every time. Quite odd. One thing that they did, this was insane. We went on a visit to the film studios, state-owned, because practically everything is, film studios, because they had heard, or my guide had told them, I don't know, that I was a famous film director, which I was not. When I worked in the film industry, I worked very much on the producer's side of things. I have directed a couple of things, but nothing. Well, I'm not a good director. It's not my thing. I only ever directed things because of necessity, where the people we did want were unavailable or unaffordable. That's the only time I ever directed anything. So I should check out what else comes out of that vending machine. But, for North Koreans, they can't look me up on IMDb, and they have no idea. Steven Spielberg could be standing in front of them and they'd be going, who? So, once the suggestion had been made that I was somehow a famous film director over in the West, that just immediately became true. Ooh, slam dunk. And yeah, there were films in production while I was there, and they wanted to know my opinion of them. It was very weird. I'm Scottish. It's a very unpopular thing to say, but I don't particularly like Scotland. I don't live there anymore, and I doubt I ever shall again. I don't like the way that people speak. The Scottish accent I find extremely wearing. That may be seen as somewhat hypocritical because I have an accent, but I don't have a strong accent. And back in my hometown, I cannot understand half of the people. Seriously, half of the people. They all understand me, of course, because I speak properly. But yes, these people speak without consonants. But so yeah, generally, I don't like Scotland. I'm not proud of being Scottish. I think that an awful lot of the Scottish pride thing is nonsense. It's based on Braveheart and everything. But whenever I travel, that's when I'm Scottish. Because I find that if you're English or British, you're welcome in a lot of places. You're certainly more welcome than Americans are. But that's not always the case. But if you're Scottish, you're welcome everywhere. And Americans absolutely love you. Because I've encountered a great number of Americans over the years who will talk at length about their Scottish ancestry. It's like, oh hey, are you Scottish? It's like, yeah. Oh, my ancestors from Scotland. I'm Scottish too. It's like, well, unless you were born there, grew up there, or spent a considerable amount of time there, I don't really think so. Like all those people in Boston who claim they're Irish. It's like, no, you're not. You know, no Irish person thinks you're Irish. God. But you'll meet an awful lot of Americans who will claim Scottish ancestry. More than can possibly actually have it. But I've never met an American who claims English ancestry. Even though an awful lot of them do. It's weird, isn't it? I guess it's not cool. Have a bit of a sniff around. Oh yeah, that thing's going to show up, isn't it? Walk slow. Yeah, whenever I travel, I like to wear my kilt. That way everyone knows you're Scottish immediately. You're welcome everywhere, everyone likes you. For unrealistic reasons. It's something I did enjoy in North Korea. It was wandering around in a kilt. People would come up and speak to me in the street. And they didn't find it unusual to see a man in a skirt, because of traditional Korean dress. But they were interested by the tartan. That's plaid for you Yankees. And they would come up and just try random English words at me. So I'd be walking along the street and somebody would sort of come rushing over and just recite sort of random English terms. You know, they'd run over and say, hello, hello, do you have a telephone? May I have a cigarette? Yeah, they don't want a cigarette, they've learned that phrase. It's very weird. But at the film studios and elsewhere, I discovered one film they had all seen that was quite surprising, was Braveheart. And oh, I guess that's this location cleaned. Yeah. I wondered why they'd seen Braveheart, but of course it's the story of a plucky little country fighting for independence against its land-based neighbour. Yes, of course. It could be seen as an allegory to the sort of North and South Korean situation. Yeah, right. Once it was explained, it became obvious. It's like, oh, interesting. So yeah, they'd all seen Braveheart. And when I was at the film studios, I was asked to sort of look through the viewfinder a couple of times. Flares. Lantern. Let's vent me a lantern. That ain't no lantern. Oh, I like that. So yeah, they asked me to look through the viewfinder of a camera a couple of times and offer advice on the shot. And they all got terribly excited at the idea that there was a Scottish film director telling them, giving them advice. I particularly was asked to advise them about their depiction of foreigners. And I suggested that the chap pretending to be an American in the scene wasn't behaving evilly enough, and perhaps he should actually kick the dog. I had fun. And, you know, that was the thing. My tour of North Korea was largely them dragging me around this endless succession of places that they wanted me to see. Many of which just weren't all that interesting, to be honest. Can I get by here? I should have a look on top of all this stuff, shouldn't I? You know, we went to various museums, went to various halls. I had to go to the sort of monument to the great and the dear leader. That's Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. I even got to do a bit of sweeping. Got to sweep some steps. It's a very rare privilege, not afforded to many foreigners. Although to me it's sweeping. Oh, wasn't a thrill. Oh well. Oh, frig. Oh, look, the enemy's jamming. Actually, these all look clean. There. I think we might almost be done. You know, what I did enjoy... Oh. Wow, that's proper jammed. When I was out and about on the streets, and yeah, contrary to what you're told, and even what I was told, I was not always accompanied by a tour guide. And, oh yes, I'm quite sure that tour guide was sort of spying on me and was reporting back and all the rest of it. Wow. Let's have a run around with the sniffer. I think this is looking pretty good. I think it might actually be done. I did get a chance to wander around freely at various points. The trouble is I don't really speak any Korean. You know, once I get beyond sort of Annyeong, Haseo, and lovely propaganda phrase that I memorised, Yanking Milwari, blah 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 blah, about Americans being werewolves in sheep's clothing. There really wasn't much I could say to people, and most North Koreans don't speak English. I mean, why should they? Yeah, of course I should tidy this away. So, you know, I wasn't going to be able to hang out with locals and chat, was I? But I did get to wander around. There are a number of sort of fun things in the area. I never had an opportunity to play with that. But yeah, I did get a chance to talk to some ordinary people. There were certain sort of fun and strange things. One of them is that the streets are very wide in Pyongyang. The streets are incredibly wide. The whole city was sort of largely bombed flat during the Korean War, so it got reconstructed as a whole. So you could actually have some planning. If you go around London, cigarette, you'll see an example of a place that has just grown up over time, and a lot of the problems in London are caused by the fact that you're building over this ancient sort of development. You know, the streets are laid out like that because they were laid out like that hundreds of years ago. And to change that, you're going to have to demolish some of the most expensive real estate in the world. So, and Pyongyang, they had a chance to build sort of anew and plan for just that, and they did. What? Oh, it's that bucket. Yep. So, yeah, the streets are amazingly wide, which surprised me. Of course, it allows military traffic easy progress through the streets. But also, there aren't many vehicles. And it's kind of weird. There's normal citizens take responsibility for cleaning up certain things. So you might find someone who's been assigned a stretch of road to keep clean, which is kind of weird to see. Although in Japan I actually see people doing that voluntarily, so I'm not sure it's so very strange. But what else was weird? Oh, the sort of public amenities. Everywhere I went, there was quite a profusion of sports halls and cultural centres. I guess that's a bit of a communist thing. But certainly anybody who was interested in sport or culture would be able to take part in that quite easily, because there are many venues where they could do so. I really don't see what's left to clean. It's just a general sloshing around. Of course, there's these propaganda posters absolutely everywhere. No advertising, which was nice. I have a friend who had a Russian wife, and I remember going out with her in London one time, and just after wandering around the streets for half an hour, she needed to lie down because she wasn't used to advertising. She lived in quite a remote region of Russia where there isn't any, so she found all these commercial messages to really sort of be assailing. What? What is it you want of me, game? I don't see anything there. Oh, there it is. But yeah, it's a strange thing to do, and there are all kinds of weird things. Like in Pyongyang, Kim Il Sung, he was right. Kim Jong Un is the leader at the moment. Kim Jong Il was his dad, and Kim Il Sung was his dad, so it's his grandfather. And Kim Il-sung was the first leader of North Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And he is known as the Great Leader. And I can see why, actually. Wow, that really is broken. I haven't had that happen before. And, after the Korean War, North Korea recovered surprisingly quickly. And for quite a period of time, they were the ones who were actually the advanced ones. They were ahead of South Korea. And that seems hard to believe now. But, oh my goodness me, just look at... Oh, there's a medical thing I need. If you look at the political history of South Korea, you find some really horrific things. South Korea was a military dictatorship for quite a long time, and people just used to disappear from the streets. Opposition politicians and things like that. People like that, I mean. It wasn't a particularly safe place to be. And, that was right up until the 80s and even into the 90s. Anyway, North Korea did better initially. And, Kim Il-sung is remembered as the great leader for that. And whatever else one could say about North Korea and bad things one could point to, Kim Il-sung's time in charge, it wasn't so bad, really. But Pyongyang was constructed in such a hurry that you can see the evidence of that. There was one building we went to where we got in a lift, and the lift went up about halfway, and then we had to get out and get in the other lift next door. And I was asking my guide why they didn't just build a lift shaft all the way to the top, and he said actually they had. But the trouble was it had been done in such a hurry. They'd continued construction before the concrete was properly dry, so the lift shaft was actually kinked. And if you took the lift any higher than we did, it would get stuck in the shaft because it would get jammed against the side. Oops. Yeah, there was evidence of that kind of thing in quite a few places, a lot of sort of slapdash construction and stuff. I don't know what that's detecting. Oh. I need to throw out these things. Well, let's just do that. I don't know why I've been keeping them anyway. So yeah, that was my trip to North Korea. Did I learn about the country? Very little. Did it change my attitude to the place? Not really. But it was very interesting to meet North Korean people. I didn't want to talk to them about politics because I thought that I'm told that they can get in trouble for talking about such things, and maybe they can. I don't know. But what I did find surprising was the people I did talk to were surprisingly well informed about world events. Better so than most Americans I've ever met. you know, people told me it was sort of compulsory to learn about these things. So, wow. Maybe it's just the paper sheets. So yeah, that was a surprise. Certainly I found all the people very friendly. More so than I would expect any of us to be towards some North Koreans. And noisy truck outside. And I was surprised by that, and I certainly enjoyed talking to North Koreans. They were all very friendly, very nice, and these are the people whom I have concerns for, you know, in the sort of political situation we have. Yeah, it seems to be the paper notes. I think a USB drive went flying out there, but I don't know where it went. Oh, now I should tell you sort of one or two other things about my trip. On my way out, I was a little concerned that they would want to take my photographs, because some of the pictures I'd taken without my guide's approval, and I thought they might want to inspect my photographs and see what I'd got. So I took apart the floppy disks, removing just the disk part, and hid them inside books. I only had a couple of books with me, but I sort of peeled back the inside cover, because they were hardbacks, and concealed the discs inside there. So I was able to come home with a set of photographs without any bother at all. Right, I think that's everything. But one interesting thing, when you get your North Korean visa, it's stuck into your passport quite gently. You know, if you get a British visa in your passport, it is stuck in there with some quite strong adhesive, and you're not going to be able to ever remove that. That's a permanent part of your passport. Well, North Korea seems to know that having a North Korean visa in your passport can sometimes be a problem. I imagine turning up to the US with a North Korean visa in my passport is not going to go particularly well for me. So I found that where's that? Just give this a general clean. Up on top. But yeah, when I was coming back out through the airport in Beijing, I wasn't the only person on that flight, obviously, and there's a whole bunch of people. There's a bin just round the corner, and as we were all coming out, there's a bunch of people standing around this bin, peeling the North Korean visa out of their passport, and binning it to avoid any potential trouble later on. Well, stuff, I've done my best there. Yeah, I thought that was quite funny. There was a bin just full of North Korean visas. Oh no. I also, when I went, I had 2 passports. This is quite a tricky thing to achieve. Certainly going to a passport office here and asking for a second passport. They don't like that. You've got to have a very good reason for them to give you one. And I explained to them I was going to North Korea, and my passport was taken from me when I arrived. I didn't see it again until I left, and I just wanted the security of having a second passport, just in case things went squint. I had to leave the place in a hurry. I didn't need it, but I've done that once or twice when I've been to certain places. I did the same thing when I was travelling in Tibet and Nepal. If you go to risky places, never hurts to have a second passport. If they'd refused me one, there we go. Then I might well have just reported my passport as lost or stolen, and got a replacement one. That's a bit more of a risky strategy, though. And so yeah, that was my trip to North Korea, and that's what happened to me whilst I was there. Just to say, not a lot. It's a lot of fun. I hope I get a chance to go back some other time. They did various things, like they took me to the museum at the border. And it's quite funny to be at the border looking across into South Korea. I saw a program recently where they claimed that the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, is the most dangerous place in the world. No, it isn't. Certain parts of Glasgow I wouldn't walk around on a Saturday night, and more dangerous than that. Yeah, that was odd to see. They took me to a museum where they showed me the axe. There was an incident back, I think in the 60s, where some American soldiers went out into the DMZ to chop down a cherry tree, and managed to accidentally sort of wander into North Korean territory or something like that. It's never very clear what happened there. And the North Koreans captured them or whatever, and proudly display the axe that one of them had. And that's the thing that pretty much all visitors have to go and see. And they took me through the reunification museum, where I had to look at a whole bunch of stuff, including gifts from other countries that they seem to think had a much greater significance than they really do. But okay, right, I think I'm done. Now I want to fill out paperwork. No, I think I'm done. Let's see how. Yes! Promoted. 68. I was 18 last time. You left the work site feeling confident that everything was in order. A good job on your record is sure to earn favour with your superiors, etc., etc. My broom high score of level 13. Okay. See, I can play with this, can't I? Ports. Oh. dictator does not complain. It's very North Korean. Weird. Ooh. A lot to play with here. I was just wondering if I could get a score for what I've done. Maybe I need to actually fill out that report in order to make it happen. Oh. A lot of weird things on there. Oh, there we go. Performance 95%. Only 95%. Oh, I didn't file any report. Stuff it. I call that a success. Yeah, here's my blue box and everything that was in it. Proudly display my spoils. Yeah, I do find North Korea very interesting. It is a place that I hear very little information about. Most of the information I do hear tends to be nonsense. Oops. Well, that's one way to empty that. Yay! Yeah, I think it's certainly a country that punches above its weight internationally. I think we're far more concerned with North Korea than we should be. I don't think they're really doing anything that can particularly harm us. However, you know, I'm not paid to have opinions about that, and I have no particular expertise on the subject, other than, you know, I read a lot of things about North Korea. Certainly, I always think they're very funny, and the recent offer to have a meeting with Trump was just bizarre. Just came out of the blue. Absolutely shocked and surprised everyone, which I thought was brilliantly fun. But the North Koreans are good at that kind of thing. Although them suggesting that they'd be willing to negotiate nuclear disarmament seems a bit weird. Because I think there's a lot of barriers to that. China is not particularly keen on a unified North Korea, because if you can imagine, you know, South Korea at the moment is quite American dominated. America has a huge amount of influence in South Korea, and you know, there's 30,000 soldiers. Yeah, I don't know why they're there. It's not like North Korea's suddenly going to try and invade, is it? But in the event of a unified Korea, obviously the country is going to end up being a lot more like South Korea than North, isn't it? And I expect one of the first things that the Americans would try and do is station some of their forces and their weapons in North Korea. And I think China would be quite averse to the idea of having American weapon systems stationed on their border, in much the same way that Russia has been. And I do not think it's unreasonable for Russia to feel a bit shirty about NATO suddenly being in Ukraine and deploying weapon systems right there on the Russian border. I think if things were the other way around, and say Russia was deploying things in Canada, right beside the US border, yeah, I can't see America liking that. But anyway, there we go. I think we've finished this for the day. It's now 8 o'clock, good lord. So you can have a nice long video of me doing something pointless and one fling on about North Korea. Of course, it's the kiss of death to almost any YouTube channel to talk about politics. Because for some reason, people who watch videos on YouTube demand that whichever channel they like must agree with them politically, or at least not appear to disagree with them, or say anything that they find contentious, or they go nuts. Because they're children and cannot tolerate dissent. I find all that very sad. Because, you know, political opinions are just opinions. And, people are free to disagree with them. You know, if any of you listening to this utterly disagree with me on North Korea, you're very welcome to leave comments saying so. I don't censor such things, and I don't just allow comments from people who agree with me or kiss my arse. That's not my interest at all. But there you go. And I suppose I presented a few opinions in this, but the vast majority of it is just sort of details of my experience in North Korea and my experience of news stories about the place. But even that's not safe. What place we live in. What times, what exciting times. How do I get out of this? Yay! Well, thank you for hanging in there. I hope you enjoyed this. Although, yeah, it's probably my dullest video. I'm going to struggle to put together an appropriate thumbnail for this, because this video's ended up being more about North Korea than it has been about cleaning up mess. Still, that's me nicely rested. It's 8 AM. It's time for me to get ready for my day. Let's see if I can go and get this whole booking sorted out without 10 people shouting at me. Oh. And, yeah, go talk to Andy Kershaw. Hooray! Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't, goodness me, why did you watch right through to this point? See you all again. Ta-ra.